Aita, for being unable to forgive my husband for yelling at me while I was in the hospital and seeing this as the nail in the coffin for our marriage. Following being released from the hospital after having our second baby, I was readmitted 1 day later due to severe preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. Since I had a C-section just 4 days prior and had a blood pressure putting me at risk of having a stroke or seizure, I was unable to drive myself to the hospital, nor could my husband, as our toddler and newborn were both sleeping. I wanted to take an Uber, but my husband insisted on asking his parents to drive me. His parents live very close by, whereas my family is all 45+ minutes away. Some background. Since welcoming our first child in 2021, the relationship with his parents has been very strained due to their overbearing nature and lack of boundaries, to the point we had several sessions with a family therapist to curb the behavior and mend fences. Unfortunately, therapy didn't help, and his parents did not continue therapy on their own, as advised by the therapist. I have very limited interaction with them, and my husband's relationship is minimal and superficial. Also to note, his parents do not have a relationship with anyone aside from their 3 kids. They cut off my MIL's parents, brothers, sisters several years ago due to family drama, and my FIL does not talk to his sister either for no apparent reason. Both of his parents have passed. I begrudgingly went along with my husband's request to let them drive me to the hospital. Once we arrived at the hospital, they would not leave, insisting that they needed to stay to help me, and even pushed their way into the ER room. They finally left when I was being transferred back to the maternity unit for treatment. This was around 11 p.m. on a Friday. Once admitted, I was placed on a mag bag V drip to prevent me from seizing, having a stroke, and minimize the other side effects of preeclampsia, HELLP. Because my newborn was only 4 days old, they allowed him and my husband to come to the hospital the next morning and stay with me for the few days until I was discharged. During this time, our 2.5-year-old son went to my in-laws. By mid-Saturday morning, I received a text from my sister-in-law expressing her concern and prayers as she had heard I was back in the hospital. My in-laws had told her husband all the details of what was going on. I found this incredibly frustrating and inappropriate, as some of the historical issues we had with my in-laws stemmed from them constantly over-inserting themselves and sharing our business, gossiping. The medical situation I was in was very serious and incredibly scary. It was not something that I feel was anyone's right to share, but mine and my husband's, especially given that I had only just been admitted and started treatment hours before. Tests were still being run, and the treatment plan was still being evaluated at this point. As soon as I got the text from my sister-in-law, I expressed my frustration to my husband about his parents sharing my medical details with others. My husband agreed and was frustrated as well, so he left the room to call his parents. He came back several minutes later and said he talked with his parents, and now I should get over it in a very flippant manner. I pressed him, asking why his parents felt it was their place to alert others, and my husband shared a made-up story about how his brother called his parents and heard my toddler in the background and asked why he was there. This was fabricated by either my husband or his parents, because minutes later, I got a text from my father-in-law saying he told my brother-in-law because as a brother, he had the right to know what was going on. At that point, I told my husband that his parents have no discretion and are again overstepping boundaries. My husband, seemingly annoyed by the whole situation, again told me to get over it in a hostile tone and went on to say they're old, so we can't change their behavior, which I agree with, but that doesn't mean we should ignore and tolerate our boundaries being violated. I then said he needs to pick a side, and yelling at me for their behavior was misplaced anger. He then said that maybe he's not the right person for me because he's not going to push back on them about stuff like this anymore, and I need to live with it. My husband just doesn't like his own boat being rocked, so plays both sides and gets angry at me when I get upset. This is a constant in our relationship. From my perspective, I was in the hospital for a very serious condition and didn't feel supported by my husband even though he agreed that his parents' behavior was inappropriate. This is compounded by the fact that we have had several similar incidents with his parents that always result in this same kind of fight. But in this particular scenario, I couldn't believe how my husband was being so mean and unsupportive given the vulnerable and scary situation I was in, and now I can't look at him the same or forgive him. If that's how he treats me in such a sensitive time, is he a partner? I feel this is the straw that broke the camel's back for our marriage. Aita for not getting over it now? Some relevant comment. I mean, obviously the husband is the AH for fighting with you while you are in the hospital, dealing with a serious medical concern. But I do feel like it is a little unusual for you to expect the in-laws to both take you to the hospital and babysit you toddler and be unable to talk to to anyone else about the situation. At that point, it is not just your medical situation. It is the answer to, what did you do last night? And why are his toddler's name at your house? And why can't you meet up with us for an event tonight? Once you involve them in the situation, it seems reasonable that they will mention it. But from the general read of this message, it seems like your anger at the in-laws in this situation is probably rooted at least in part in the past problems. And as you said, this is a straw that broke the camel's back situation. And honestly, I would be more mad that your husband would not let you call an Uber, would not call you an ambulance, or would not throw the 2 kids in the car to get you to the hospital. A single night's sleep for the kids is not more important than your medical emergency? Like, the priorities here are kinda wild to me.